Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday morning. Can y'all believe this is like the last Monday of the year? That doesn't even sound right, does it? Like, this is the last Monday of 2021. So, we are being joined today again by our very own Craig Phillips. And Craig has been with us before, of course, and he's joining us again. He was nice enough to join us again. And his topic is writing, a form of healing. And the quote is from Kirin. And it says, writing is more than just a method to tell stories. It's a way to find healing and to healing others. And again, this is Craig's second talk with us. He has been volunteering for Gilchrist about 6 years as an end-of-life doula in the Towson Center, as well as providing respite to caregivers in their homes. He shared the following with us regarding this week's topic. The experiences I've had in the past years have been profound, life-changing. I've also found the work to be emotionally strenuous on occasion, and that requires self-care. Part of my self-care is writing, and some of the stories he's going to be sharing are HIPAA sensitive, and they are seldom stories that he shared about these experiences. I find the process cathartic, and it helps me to remember. It is my pleasure to recount some of these beautiful experiences and share them with you. Warning, some may make you cry and some will definitely make you laugh out loud, but altogether, he hopes to leave us inspired. So Craig, welcome again, and we thank you for coming to share some of these stories with us and for closing out our year with us. So the floor is open to you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I have dozens of stories and I just couldn't figure out which ones. And then I thought to myself, oh, well, this ought to be fun. I'll share the stories specifically that were ones where I did something wrong. And so the things that I've done wrong, that includes moving two patients, accepting a gift, and a near case of involuntary manslaughter. How's that for a setup, huh? And I'll follow up those stories with a final story, which is inspirational and a message that we can all take forward to the next year. And I'll start with my first patient, and Patty, you'll remember some of these, I'm sure. My first patient was Mr. Lark, we'll call him, 75 with throat cancer. He's very frail. He had a trach. Communication was difficult. I took him a letter chart, letters that he could point to or look and blink, that I would hope would help him as long as his strength remained. This was a poor family in South Baltimore. They had a really hard life. And the last time I visited Mr. Lark, his daughter was to be back around noon, and she was running late. And Mr. Lark got to the side of the bed, and he urgently wanted something from me, and I couldn't figure it out. And he was quite ill, but he got himself to the side of the bed, and he's trying to get up and get out. And it's like, oh my God, I'm not supposed to move a patient. But he was so little and so frail that I took him, and he pointed into the next room. And we got into the kitchen, and as I said, his daughter was running late. It was past noon, and he points to the refrigerator, and he points to me, and he goes like this. This man was concerned as to whether or not I had lunch or something to eat or drink. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And bear with me a sec. They happened to have a little Shih Tzu dog that was quite a mess, and the caregiver said that she needed to give it a bath, and I could see that she was exhausted. So I did that. These are live notes. So I did that for her yesterday. The caregiver, was thrilled, and I got my doggy fix. I also got soaked in the process. It was a beautiful thing. And the gratitude that they had was just amazing. I don't have a dog, but I borrowed all my neighbor's stuff in a bucket, and I clipped her nails and everything. So that's just less of a story there, but just that was my introduction to the beauty of the work. My second patient, the social worker's note of my second patient said, Mr. D was a 92-year-old man with a love of big band music. I smiled as I read this because though I'm the tender age of 61 at time of writing, it just so happens that I have a good appreciation of the genre. When I was a boy, my father used to wake us up every Saturday and Sunday with Tommy Dorsey and Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller blaring through the house. Today, I'm thankful for this gift, and pretty soon I'd be even more thankful. At our first meeting, my new friend, Mr. D, labored to put in a few CDs. We listened and enjoyed the selections, but I wasn't really sure that I was providing any service. And the following week, I brought my laptop with a Bose speaker for him. And whenever Mr. D would mention a song, I could pull up multiple versions on YouTube with videos that totally blew him away. He had never even conceived that all this was out there. And he was absolutely thrilled. He didn't just like big band. He was a true aficionado. I could pull up a band and he could tell me all the members and who they were married to, who else they played with, and so on and so on. He took the role of my tutor and I his student. He even gave me homework. I would print out biographies for him, create playlists, and for our weekly visits. We grew to have a great rapport. One day he said to me, he says, we're a couple of nuts. I laughed and I said, yeah, well, I wasn't that nuts until I met you. And we laughed and laughed. And he was a big fan of Louis Prima, excuse me, and even more of a fan of his Louis's wife, Keely Smith. And it wasn't long before I fell in love with her too. And we would listen to her every week. And one day, out of the blue, his son texted me and he said, Dad wants you to come over on Tuesday because he might not make it until your normal day of Thursday. And he has a gift for you. I told the son that I couldn't accept anything of value, but I'd be over. And in spite of being ambulatory and sharp as a tack, Mr. D told me that he wasn't feeling very well. And he really wanted to give me something before Thursday, at which point he presented me with 2 Keely Smith LP albums. And he stood there and I watched this really stoic man have a tear come to his eye, and one came to mind. I got back in the car and I pulled away and I drove down the block and I pulled over and just cried. And I thought that this gift of little value was worth $1 million to me. I saw Mr. D for the last time the next Thursday. We had a marvelous afternoon of music. At one point, we were singing together, and I thought the 2 dogs that they had were about to howl. This is good work. Kevin was in his late 30s, a nice-looking man with a hint of red in his hair. To my great surprise, he met me in the lobby of the apartment building, and there we walked slowly across the street for a cup of coffee. But his brain cancer was very aggressive, and this was to be one of his last trips. Over the next 2 months, I got to know him, his wife, and his 2 teenage children. They were so enlightened and accepting of his impending death. They were better than humanly possible even. And Kevin was simply a great guy. As time progressed, he became bedridden and he lost his ability to speak. These are a little hard. Sorry. And so he lost his ability to speak. And during one of the visits, he made it clear to me that he really had to pee. And he couldn't manage the urinal bottle by laying down. And he wanted to sit on the side of the bed. He had gained a lot of weight. And so it was difficult for me to try to get him into position, but we finally made it. And then at that point in time, when he's sitting on the edge of the bed, he was exhausted and he didn't have the strength to hold the bottle. And I was thinking, well, I didn't sign up for this, but I thought, well, I'm not a nurse, but I don't have much choice here. And what the hell? We're all human, aren't we? So I held the bottle for him. And with my other arm, I tried to support him and have him sit up. When we were done, however, he was now sideways on a small, narrow bed. If I lifted his legs up, he'd be back over the back. So I had to get him into position. I got to get his torso situated onto the bed so that when I pulled his legs up, and at one point, this would appear to anyone to have been a Greco-Roman wrestling match. And at one point, I had my arm around him and my hands like this around his back, and our faces were close like a lover's embrace. And I looked into his eyes and I said, "Mama said there'd be days like this." And the two of us just burst out laughing. It just laughed and laughed and laughed. So that was another one of moving a patient. So here's when someone has ALS and comes into the center, I try to see them. I'm comfortable with ALS victims, and I'm sure that they sense that. There's a long story behind that. But everyone loved Rhonda. She made an impression on everyone she met. I had met her twice before when she was in for a week's respite. She was absolutely delightful. She communicated via computer that built words from the letters she would stare at. If you've ever seen this, it's an arduous process. But rather than just say hello or nothing at all, she would make an effort to say things like, "Hello, Craig, I'm so glad to see you." Or, "Thank you, pretty nurse Sue." Or, "Thank you, young man, for coming in to clean my room." Seriously, she would just go to all that effort. Everybody loved her. Her understanding was that she was to be in Gilchrist indefinitely. If she thought she might die in 6 months, she never let on. To me, she appeared well enough to potentially last for a year. You know how sometimes people just connect? Well, we connected, and I sort of allowed us to become friends. And I suppose what that means is we talked openly, we each enjoyed each other's company, and she was so damn funny. I decided to dedicate myself to her till death do us part, so to speak. Twice a week, I brought my laptop, here's music again, and we'd take turns playing music. She liked romantic Motown, and she would play some P-Funk for me because I like the funk. And I would play some world music and Afrobeat for her, or for both of us. And she had an encyclopedic knowledge of music also. During one visit, I played a video for Rhonda by Wanda Sykes. If y'all know Wanda Sykes, she's a comedian, just a real pisser. And the subject matter was the difficulties that women have, especially Black women, in being taken seriously by the medical system. Wanda told all her sisters step-by-step instructions as to how to make yourself heard. And then she said, if all else fails, find yourself a white man to repeat everything you say. And I told her that, I said, Rhonda, I'm your white man. And oh my God, she just burst out into a laugh. The trouble is, with an ALS patient bursting out into a laugh, that was a difficult thing. She then went into a convulsion for about a minute's time. It seemed like it was forever. We breathed together and we got through it. And with her permission, I wiped her face with a cloth. And we backed off the comedy for a little while and we moved on to Miles Davis. The next week I saw her, I told her that I was glad that I didn't have to write in the book, patient died laughing. Again, we had a good relationship. We could do this. It was funny. And that nearly set her off again. We had great visits. She'd send me off by saying, "Later, Gator," and I'd leave with great joy. At our last visit, while listening to something soft and sweet, I asked Rhonda if we might hold hands, and she told me her hand was numb. I said rhetorically, "You mean you can't respond, but you can feel?" And she affirmed and consented, and I held her warm, immobile hand as we listened to Barry White and James Taylor. And she told me through her computer activated voice and through her eyes how absolutely wonderful it was. And it was indeed. I informed Mary and Patty of the special relationship I had built, and I had seen her on a Friday, and the next Monday, Patty was kind enough to call me and let me know about Rhonda's death of a heart attack before that I got to the center. I knew it's always, getting close to the patient brings some pain, but I didn't expect it to come so soon. And I had a great playlist ready for her. Y'all know, maybe Jack, the security guard, he was on duty and he had heard from a number of folks how wonderful Rhonda was. And I told him that she had just died. And he blurted out, "Thank goodness." And I was just like, what? And he said, "That's what you or I would have wanted." And I'm like, yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. He's a wise man, Jack. The last story is the one with an important message. This morning, I was sitting with a gentleman on what I expect to be his last day with us. I was in meditation, matching his breaths to mine, which is a powerful exercise for sure. And a nurse came in and said, "If you would, there's a woman next door who's really disoriented. You might be able to help calm her, or she might just throw you out. In any event, you might be able to help." And in the last couple of years, I realized that I sometimes have the ability to, since I'm a pretty calm person, except right now when I'm reading, I have the ability to help people calm. And so I said I was happy to help. And I walked in and the aide was repositioning, we'll call her Nancy, on the bed. And the bed needed to be flat for the maneuver. And Nancy was in a total panic. She's pleading to be put upright. And I went over and I took her hand and explained what was happening and that it would be over soon. And she held on to me and we kept eye contact and I talked her through it and we got through it together. When she was upright again, her panic dissipated some, but she still had tremendous angst. She was disoriented in regard to how, when, why she was at hospice. Understand, she didn't know. She knew, she was perfectly clear. She didn't know why she was in hospice. I pulled my chair up beside her and explained, as the nurse had informed me, that she had taken a fall at her home and hit her head. Nancy told me she had no recollection of the fall and physically she felt fine. She explained her anxiety over having bills to pay, medicines that she needed, promises to keep. She was concerned about her house and all the things in it. She had left her jewelry sitting on the nightstand. The nurse also had whispered in my ear, "Advanced pancreatic cancer." I didn't know if Nancy knew, and it wasn't my place to tell her, but I fished around and asked her about her health, and it turned out that she did know. She thought she might be in remission, and the fact that she was in hospice made her wonder whether she was or not. Again, she had no idea why she was there. She told me that she'd been fixing her own meals, cleaning her own house, paying her own bills, and boom, she ends up in hospice. She seemed clear and sharp, and even a little bit of humor came through for a minute. And but she was really in a conundrum, and anyone would be in her place. We sat quietly together and appreciated her dilemma. Calming a little further, she said to me, "It's your job to calm me down, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." I said, it's not my job, it's my pleasure. And a pleasure to meet her and be with her. We sat there quietly as things were starting to sink in for her. And then she turned her head to me and she looked at me with a look that communicated so much. And she just looked at me and said, "I wasn't done yet. I wasn't done yet." I told her I'd be back on Monday if she didn't go home in the meantime, and she thanked me. And I left that space, I left the center that day with the words, "I wasn't done yet," kept ringing in my ears. And I thought to myself, there's nothing more important than to be done or to be ready to be done every day. And by done, that means not only update your will and advance directives on that, but more important than that, it means telling everyone that you love them, Include yourself in that outpouring. Forgive others, forgive yourself for your transgressions. Tell people you appreciate them. Give away some money to charity or someone in need. And let the consciousness of the fact that you could be gone tomorrow guide your actions. And that's what I've learned from this work and wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. They were beautiful stories. Yes, some definitely would make you cry, but even in the tears, you saw the laughter. And you know, yours is a form of writing. I love pictures and just the memories that they both hold, where you can go back and you can recollect, and you know, you can look at a picture and remember a story, or like you said, you can write it down and go back and read it, and it makes you laugh at the same time. It makes you cry, but it reminds you that you're human, for one. And then your last, what you just said, every day you just have to remember, you never know when you'll be gone, when that other person will be gone. So if you can make the most of every day and, you know, be a blessing to somebody every day. So thank you for what you do. And I'm sure the families of the patients that you've seen and you've imparted into their lives, I'm sure they remember you as well. So thank you. And at this time, we'll open it up. If anyone has a question for Craig or a comment, please share.
I don't have a question for Craig. I just want to thank him so much for sharing those stories with us. And I also want to offer this caveat for, I know many of you aren't volunteers, and I don't want you to get the impression that Craig is a typical volunteer. He sets the ultimate standard in what volunteers should be. And he's the quintessential volunteer. And you shouldn't expect that any of the rest of us can live up to that kind of practice. You know, he modestly says that his last story had an important message, when obviously every one of his stories had a profound message for all of us. You know, Craig has the capacity to connect so authentically with his patients, and to be so open-hearted with them, and to be so present with them. If I ever needed a hospice volunteer, I would pray that I could have a volunteer like Craig.
Oh my, thank you.
So thank you, Craig.
Oh, that was very nice. Yep, I agree.
Let's cut before I start crying. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any comments or anything they would like to share?
Yes, Craig. I recognize the families and patients that you mentioned, and I just want to thank you again for all you've done for our patients and families, and helping as a doula at the inpatient unit. You've been wonderful to all of them.
You've been wonderful, Patty. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Craig, thank you so much for just sharing this beautiful part of your story. And I think all of us were just absolutely touched by your story and by you sharing a piece of yourself. My question is, you know, I'm hearing how close and how deeply you connected to people on such emotional, spiritual, artistic, you know, musical ways, and you really build a bond. But you know, when one of your patients passes away after you've built such a bond, and then of course it's hospice, so it happens again and again, and you are who you are, so you're connecting like again and again. How do you come down from that? How do you, I guess, have your own healing and recovery after losing someone who has been so meaningful to you?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance. And I know luckily I can kind of feel when I'm getting out of balance, and it happens on occasion, and cognizant of it. And then there were times over these years where I used to be at the center at Mondays and Fridays, and on a Wednesday I go out to a patient, and sometimes I would just tell Patty, I gotta just go one day a week or back off. And then I'm involved in death and dying stuff outside of our hospice work too. So I'll try and, again, keep some sort of balance. One thing I'll just say quickly is that I don't get involved with every patient like this. This is 6 years, although I do have a lot of stories. But one of the things, I'll try to make it quick. I remind myself of the difference between compassion and empathy. Compassion is you really care about the person, but there's some distance between it. And empathy is you're really right in there feeling it with them. There's nothing wrong with either. But when you let yourself go into empathy, as these stories were mostly, Rhonda and the fellow mentioned, those were deep empathy. I was right there with them, and but being cognizant, okay, this is going to hurt. And I always also say it's going to hurt if I don't die first. I don't take it for granted that it won't be me that's first. That's kind of the immediacy that's kind of my message, the immediacy of that. Other than that, having beers with my doula buddies, running long distance, working in my Zen garden. I've got a lot of different things that help me, and meditation. Meditation helps me tremendously to keep a balance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Craig, we say thank you again. Thank you for your warm and gentle spirit that we can definitely sense. You're always so calming and inviting. So we thank you. So everyone, we thank you again for joining us today, and Happy New Year to everyone
Happy
if
New
we
Year.
don't see you
New
before
Year.
then. So have a wonderful week, and remember to just always be kind. Always. Thank you. And Craig, hope
Happy
to
New
see you
Year.
again next year to bring us some more stories and another
Father.
message. Yep.
Thank you,
So
Craig.
everyone have a good
Bye,
week.
everybody.